A lot of people assume opening a bookstore started with a bank loan, the perfect business plan, and a ton of experience. But for me, that wasn't the case. Honestly, it started with me awkwardly walking into bookstores and asking if I could have a conversation with the owner. Sometimes people brushed me off, which, fair enough, they were busy. But eventually, I found some incredibly generous bookstore owners who were kind enough to sit down and spend time with me to help me understand the book business. It was my way of figuring out if opening a bookstore was for me. And looking back, I think those early conversations were the single most important thing I did when I was opening my store. Because at that point, I had the dream, I loved books, and I loved bookstores, but I had no idea how to actually run one. So in this video, I want to basically offer that conversation that I had with those bookstore owners to you. I'm going to walk you through the real steps I took to open Old Town Books, my independent bookstore in Alexandria, Virginia, which this year will be open for 8 years. I'll talk about the branding, the finances, the lease, taking a loan out from my mom. I'll talk about the mistakes, the exhaustion, all of it. Part 1, the conversations. Very early on, I started reaching out to bookstore owners anywhere I could. At the time, I lived in Brooklyn, so that meant it was a lot of bookstores in the New York City area. I met with Greenlight Books, Community Bookstore, and Books Are Magic. All of these bookstore owners were so generous and spent time with me. Some I took out to lunch, some let me come into the store and practice scanning books. Others, we just had conversations on the fly, and it was super helpful. Even the littlest bits of information were so useful. I even cold called Ann Patchett's bookstore, Parnassus Books, in Nashville, and I got a good piece of advice, which I'll get to later. Everywhere I went, I asked the same question. What's one thing you wish you had known when you were starting your bookstore? A lot of the answers weren't even about books at all. People talked about bookkeeping, cash flow, taxes, keeping business and personal finances separate so your books were all clean. Basically, it was know your numbers. And honestly, that advice probably saved me because I used those first conversations to find a bookkeeper. And it's actually the same bookkeeper now 8 years later that I still work with. So my first bit of advice is to definitely have some early conversations. Talk to people who have been there and who know what they're doing. You can always reach out to me at allykirkpatrick.com. I think conversations are important because sometimes people just think that entrepreneurship is this solo act and that you're all on your own, but really it's important to ask for help and do the research. Part 2, making it real. The second thing I did after I did all of those interviews and had all of those conversations was I did all of the boring back-end work of setting up a small business. That means I went online and I created my LLC. I set up my EIN. I reserved all of my social media handles, and I bought a website domain. None of it was very glamorous or difficult, but psychologically it mattered. Every little step made the business feel more real. I also started documenting the process on social media, which really helped. It made me feel like I had a story to tell and I had skin in the game because I was saying it out loud in public. I am opening a bookstore. Sure, I didn't have a location, I didn't have bookshelves, I didn't have books, but I had a dream and I was going to document it to try to get as many people as I knew in my community excited about the bookstore opening. Part 3, branding. Speaking of making things feel real, I'm a very visual person. Branding was really important to me early on, so it was one of the first things I invested in. Before I had a lease, before I had inventory, before I had anything else tangible, I needed to see the brand to believe in it. So pretty early on, I invested in a branding package with a designer, which felt a little bit insane at the time because I didn't have a storefront, I didn't have a business plan, I just had this spark of an idea. But branding is so important. I had a really clear vision of what I wanted. I wanted the branding to reflect Old Town Alexandria and have this sort of modern Americana feeling. I wanted it to feel like the business had been around for 50 years and was going to be here for 50 more years. So sort of timeless. Our colors became pink, cream, and teal, a play on the patriotic red, white, and blue. Old Town Alexandria has a really deep tie to early America, so it felt like a fun nod to that history. So we created a logo that felt grounded and classic. I spent about $5,000 on branding, and that was before I had almost anything else figured out. Part of why I did that, I think, was that I needed to have some skin in the game. By investing that initial $5,000 in branding, I felt like I was really committing to the project. Once I invested that money, the business stopped feeling hypothetical, and it started to feel real. Part 4, learning the industry. Around that time, I also realized I really needed to learn the book industry. One thing a lot of my conversations had led to was you need to join the ABA, the American Booksellers Association, which, if you're watching this video, thinking about opening your own bookstore, definitely take that advice. I attended NABA, the New Atlantic Independent Booksellers Association's regional conference. And there I met sales reps, I met authors, I met other booksellers. It was an overwhelming and information-packed weekend, and I highly recommend that you join your regional and national booksellers association. Bookselling is such a collaborative industry. People really do want to help each other succeed. Those conferences made the whole thing feel less abstract and more real. Part 5, financing the pop-up. Then came the terrifying part, for me at least, the money. I worked on a business plan and I brought it to my local SBA office for feedback. And I got advice about applying for bank loans. I made my forecasting for finances as clear and as realistic as possible. But when I went to the bank, I couldn't even get approved for a credit card, let alone a loan to open the store. It was really discouraging. I had a vision for my bookstore, but financially I looked very risky. I had at the time no business or entrepreneurial experience. I had no retail experience, and I didn't have much collateral. But while I was working with my local SBA office, I learned about a pop-up program through the Alexandria Economic Development Partnership. AEDP, as it's called, is very specific to Alexandria, but it's very likely that you have some other economic partnership group in your town or city. So through this pop-up program, I got introduced to landlords who had vacant spaces who were looking for month-to-month tenants to pop up in their spaces. I got connected to a temporary landlord who was willing to rent to me, because here's the other thing. When I was looking at properties, landlords didn't even want to rent to me because I didn't have the finances and I didn't have the history of running a business. So I couldn't even get a lease. The pop-up program made it so that I was lower risk. I was just going to do month to month. So it was easier to get the lease, but it was also riskier because I could be kicked out at any minute. But I decided to go for it. So I bought some secondhand shelves. They were leftovers from another bookstore build out. And I just happened to find out by contacting that mill worker to say, hey, can I buy these secondhand shelves from you if you're not using them? And they said, sure. And so that's how I got a bunch of bookshelves from North Carolina delivered to my little pop-up shop a couple weeks later. And then I purchased the smallest amount of inventory. It literally looked like we had no books on the shelves, but at the time it was all I could prepay for. Because when you're opening your bookstore for the first time and you don't have the credit history, you can't open accounts directly with the publishers. You have to go through a wholesaler called Ingram, and Ingram will help you set up your opening order, but you need to prepay for it because you don't have credit terms yet. And at this time, I was sort of panicking because I needed more money. And because I couldn't get approved for a traditional loan, I decided to ask my mom, who's a retired kindergarten teacher and who loves books. And she completely believed my dream. And shout out to Mom, I could not have done this without her. I got a $40,000 loan from my mom, which helped me buy more inventory, finish the furniture, the computers, get all the last things that I needed. So my whole budget all in was like $45,000 for the pop-up. And Mom, it's the kindest thing anyone's done for me. So I know it sounds like I'm a Nepo baby. I own that title happily because my mom was so generous and supported me. So I only hope that you can either get a bank loan, or you have more of a credit history than I had, or you get an SBA loan, or you're like me and you're lucky and you have family who will give you a personal loan. And yes, I did pay her back within 2 years. So thanks, Mom. Part 6. Actually opening. For inventory, like I mentioned, I placed my opening inventory on Ingram. I had a sales rep there who helped me decide which books to bring in. At the time, I had no experience with genre fiction. I read literary fiction, I read poetry, but I didn't know anything about kids' books or mysteries or thrillers. So my sales rep helped me look at sales data and bring in the most competitive titles for that shelf space. And then over time, as people started buying books and special ordering them, I was able to dial in my inventory to reflect what my neighborhood was interested in, what they were reading. And I also began reading more wildly and working with my sales rep to kind of discover the vibe and the feel of my own store. But yeah, in the beginning, I was not able to open accounts with Hachette and Penguin and Simon & Schuster. I had to wait a couple of months to get that track record going of showing them I can pay my bills, I'm deserving of 30-day credit terms. And so eventually after like 4 months, I was able to go and open accounts with each of the publishers. And that's a really important point to know because the margin that you get buying directly from the publishers is a lot better than the one that you get buying from the wholesaler Ingram. So I also set up my point of sale system, which is Book Manager. And I really highly recommend Book Manager for anyone opening a store. They're a company based in Canada and they integrate with a web store and it's just really user-friendly and they have really amazing customer service. So if you have any questions or you need training, Book Manager is where it's at. Highly recommend. So I got set up with Book Manager. I got my computers. I got my opening inventory. I was ready to go. I just needed to do some more marketing. But since I had been running my social media accounts and really telling the story of opening the store from day one, I had a big following at that point. And so when I opened on Small Business Saturday, people knew that we were there and were excited and showed up. After that, everything kind of became a blur. I was working like 12 to 14-hour days. I was surviving on coffee from the cafe next door. I was just completely underwater trying to keep up with the demand. We were really busy because it was the holidays and people were shopping for gifts, and I kept running out of books because I just wasn't ordering enough and I didn't have the budget to order more. So slowly, as we made more profits, I reinvested the profits into buying more inventory. It was a crazy time, and I remember being completely exhausted, but also very happy. Part 7, hiring and growing. A few weeks in, I realized pretty quickly that running the store completely alone just wasn't possible. So I hired my first employee, which was honestly terrifying because suddenly I wasn't just responsible for myself anymore. I was responsible for people's livelihoods and for payroll. By the new year, I had a small team helping run the sales floor and receiving inventory, and it was totally worth every penny. Slowly, the bookstore started to grow, and every time the business made money, those first couple of years, I reinvested it back into the store. And I didn't pay myself, but I've talked about that in other videos, which I can link below. But basically, I don't know if I recommend that route because it did lead to burnout, but it did help the store grow organically and with a very small amount of investment upfront. And slowly over time, the bookstore became the bookstore people know it as today. I think sometimes people imagine a business opening fully formed. But for me, opening a bookstore looked like asking for help and making mistakes, working too much and learning along the way. And honestly, I'm really glad that I started before I felt ready, because you're never really totally ready. If you want more videos like this about the behind the scenes looks at starting a bookstore or the logistics of running one, comment below and let me know what I should talk about. Thanks for being here. See you next time.